What's going on, people? Georgio Savvides here, founder of the Hip-Hop Orchestra, as well as the host of the Hip-Hop Orchestra Presents podcast. And I got a really exciting announcement to finally make with everyone, is that we have our very first official sponsor for the podcast. Now, they are an amazing, amazing company called Odin's Vault, who are extremely dedicated in bringing you the very best in officially licensed merchandise from pop culture. And when I mean the very best, I mean the very best. They provide things like keyrings, caps, t-shirts, to Funko Pops, to statues from all over, such as DC, Marvel, Disney, The Mandalorian, Harry Potter, music artists from all over the place, and they are ridiculously good. I've got a couple of things to show you on offer at the moment. This trust with their stuff is amazing. So, t-shirts, like I mentioned, like the one I'm wearing right now. It's got Rocky right here, which I absolutely love. Or, like I said, also got Funko Pops as well, 3.75 inches and 10 inches. I've got a couple of 10 inches right here for you. I've got Post Malone right here, and I've also got Biggie right here, who I absolutely love. These are so sick. Odin's Vault, trust me, they are amazing. Now, I'm going to leave the link below in the video right here, and also in the description below as well in all future videos from the podcast. But trust me, Odin's Vault are amazing. Website is www.odinsvault.co.uk. Get in touch with them now and start buying ASAP. But also, before I forget as well, I just want to say the biggest thank you to Odin's Vault for sponsoring the podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Thank you. And trust me, get in touch with them right now. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And peace. What's going on, people? Welcome to another amazing episode today of the Hip-Hop Orchestra. We're joined by a couple of amazing guests today, JooWan Kim and Christopher Nicholas, who are the executive directors of Ensemble Mik Nawooj and also composer and pianist. How are you guys doing? You okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You pronounced my name correctly.
Thank God for that.
You got the name right.
That's
too.
right.
Very rare.
I did my research, so don't worry. But how's things, guys? Is everything okay?
Yes, thank you.
Well, as good as it could be, but fortunately, we were working the whole time since even the beginning of the lockdown. So we got two big commissions. One included a Broadway musical.
Wow.
That had to be done within some parts of it had to be recorded because, if you have a big budget involved, you have to send. You're there spending the money, so you have to send them the proof. And so we had to do the demo, which was like a couple sessions, and we had to organize that. And then right after that, we got another commission. So we've been working, very fortunately, but other performing arts. Our colleagues, they've been suffering a lot. So
I can imagine. What was it like to work on a Broadway show? Was that your first one?
it would be indeed our first one.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I don't know whether I should say this. Maybe I should just.
Yeah, we can't go into go into too many details about it. But
Okay.
The funny thing about this is that I always told Chris, like, there are three things that I don't get in America: football, racism, and musicals. So it's ironic that I wrote a musical.
Yeah.
So.
Was it as you don't know much about it, but was it a really difficult process to work on then, or did you have to research loads of things, or how was it for you to work on something brand new for you?
It is brand new, but I actually approached it as if I was writing opera because it's a musical about. I don't think I should talk about that.
Okay,
but
I'll skip it then.
It's appropriate to have our sound that has hip hop and classical. So the producer actually have worked with us. He had commissioned us to write for a documentary film and play about James Baldwin, and then he, like about 3 years ago, pretty much right after Hamilton, he started calling me. He's like, look, man, you got to do musical with me. I was like, oh, no, I can't. In the beginning of the pandemic, it was actually slightly before that. You know, he was like, okay, I got the investors. This is going to be a big budget thing. I was like, okay, here we go. But the writing itself was actually very enjoyable because, I mean, when you're unable to perform, our entire tour has been canceled.
Wow.
We were going to go to Alaska for a week and then go to Texas and, you know, Washington. There were a lot of tours have been canceled. So I was very grateful, and so I was just writing music, and it kind of kept me going and kept us going. So
oh, fantastic! You've got a brand new single out now as well, haven't you, at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah.
How's that going for you? That's amazing. I heard it's brilliant. How's it going for you so far?
Yeah, it's going really well. So that single is so it's part of our album that's going to be coming out on March 19th. And it's in collaboration with Asian Art Museum and the Yerba Gardens Festival. And so the whole project was in a kind of in relation to promote healing in this whole time of COVID. And initially we were, regarding the music video, initially we were supposed to film it at Asian Art Museum. It was supposed to be a huge concert with all musicians and dancers and everything. And then when the lockdown happened and it wasn't clear how the museums would be affected, we had to pivot very quickly and to make it into a live performance at a recording studio. So if you watch the video, you'll see all the musicians all masked and we're in a recording studio. And so it was done on separate days to really keep everyone safe and protected. And so the first single is Beethoven on Struggle.
I heard it's amazing. I watched the video as well. It's unreal. Really is amazing. And you said you did separate days as well. Was it more difficult for you to do that on separate days, or was it kind of easier in a sense because you got sort of smaller groups to work with so you can get the better sound and so forth?
Well, it was actually easy because, you know, the rhythm section and the strings, we did it together. Mm-hmm. So the drum was in the separate booth, and then all the strings were with me with the piano, and then I was conducting them, and we had a click track on. And then after that, the winds could actually pretty much follow it because a lot of it was carried by us before. So it was pretty easy, actually. What was not easy was that, you know, the whole sort of schedule and like a day before, for instance, one of our violinists couldn't do it, and it was like 5 hours before the recording session. So
no.
Yeah, it was literally the night before. So I was making dinner. I got a frantic call at like 7 o'clock. I'm like, okay. And then I called you on at like 7:10.
Okay.
We had a little freak out moment, and then by around 9 o'clock, we had a substitute.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I mean, because I've dealt with the same sort of situations before where literally last minute people can't do things, even on the day of, say, a performance where someone would call me or text me saying, I'm really ill, I can't make it. I mean, do you have, say, backup musicians just in case for any future projects, or do you tend to work with, say, the same 10-piece musicians and then try and...
Yeah, I mean, we always try to work with the same people. If something were to come up, we do have a vast list of people that we can contact. Normally, the players are professional enough that they get us a sub, or they can recommend us someone. And if that falls through, then, you know, we have a lot of people that we can contact, because we've been working in and out of the Bay Area for 10 plus years now. So just about every major player out here knows who we are. So
that's amazing.
It's easier now to find people. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, how did you two initially meet in the first instance?
I can talk about
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Good.
Well, I was, I came to United States when I was 20 years old, and pretty much like a year after I met Chris, and it was at our undergrad, which is long time ago.
Yeah.
And so he was my roommate, undergrad roommate, and now like I can't get rid of this guy.
So we went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and so he was doing a major in composition, or it was piano first, right?
No,
or
composition.
Composition. And I was at first considering a major in music business, and then like I changed that semester to just kind of pursue what I wanted to pursue, which was performance for voice and songwriting. And so after we both graduated, he did his master's out here in California. I did my master's in jazz studies at University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. And then after I was done in 2009, he was already starting to run the group, and he needed some help. So he asked me to come out and help him manage the group while he was writing and doing all that stuff. So I came out, and we just kind of started rolling with it, figuring out what worked, what didn't work. We worked for some publicists that weren't able to kind of get us things that we needed. So we let them go. And then I just kind of figured out what they were doing. Then we developed a great relationship with NPR and other local media outlets. And we just started garnering a name for ourselves. So
that's amazing. Because where did the initial idea of a hip hop orchestra come for you two? Like you said, it's led by you, JooWan, and you came in to help out afterwards. Where did the initial idea of a hip hop orchestra actually come for you?
Well, I mean, it wasn't really like I wanted to do an orchestral composition and then have an MC on it. It was like a protest piece for me. While I was doing my master's, and I mean, even towards the end of my bachelor's, I was kind of getting tired of sort of the aesthetic of concert music and how it's really alienating a lot of listeners. As I was learning more, I realized after you learn the basic things like counterpoint, orchestration, and basic understanding of the forms, and you analyze things. But then afterwards, you are really going into a territory of aesthetics, and I just didn't buy into it. I never bought into the idea that you could actually manufacture a top-down sort of musical language like Second Viennese School, that they had an idea of like, okay, after we do this, Kesha will sing atonal music. That was their idea. It was crazy delusion. Like it never happened. And this pushing of musical language that the composers who are trained, they all have in the back of their mind is totally crazy. So I thought it was almost like religion, and I wanted to get out of it. And so by the time when I got to the conservatory in San Francisco, I was punk rock, to say the least. And I wanted to shake things up, and I wanted to piss off my teachers. And I had a group of, I had a piece that was presented at the composers concert, which is like a academic year-end sort of concert that is open to public. It's kind of like a big deal for composition department. And then I had a 10-piece group that is very similar to the ensemble now, and then an MC and a drum. It was like middle finger to all. I have succeeded in pissing off my teachers.
Yeah.
And so was surprised by the public reception. They really loved it. And we got a big full-page write-up on a very respectable publication. And I was like, what's going on? And that was over 15 years ago. So,
wow.
So after that, I kind of did a little bit more soul searching because I had no intention of doing hip hop at all. And then my MC at the time suggested that I should write an album with him. And I spent next 6 months writing about an hour of music. And then meanwhile, I started listening to classic hip hop albums. And then when it was that time, I have encountered NWA, and it was almost like a sudden sort of conversion experience. I felt like I was dipped into the river of hip hop and was reborn. And what I really got connected with the album was that, especially this track called After Police. I don't know whether you know that track.
Mm-hmm, of course, yeah.
Right. So I realized that it was not necessary, it was never about these clever structures that you have to come up with, like thinking about things, and that makes musical language. It's actually the deep and profound necessity that these people had. I mean, the kind of audacity to talk about that kind of subject, you know, like this is before this whole like cancel culture and like social sort of awareness of these kind of problems. And they got into a lot of trouble. And I felt like, wow, it felt like freedom to me, like a freedom of expression. So I decided I was going to pursue this seriously. And then I kind of got into it and realized that the underlying principle of hip hop, what we call now metasampling, was there, right? So what metasampling is basically a way of taking principles, sampling principles that is foreign to your field, and then by reframing them, this is a very important part, you actually kind of come up with something new. What I mean by that is that, for instance, when I first started writing, my strategy was to actually use only classical techniques, because I've, you know, spent a lot of time and money to learn it, might as well use it, right? So, and then by using those, I wanted to recreate like hip hop tracks, like bangers, right? Couldn't do it. And as what I've ended up making was this weird thing that was neither hip hop nor classical. And then that was my aha moment. I was like, okay, so I realized that these kind of misunderstanding of others, other facts, other systems actually promotes innovation, right? So, and then once I start knowing that, I start seeing that pattern everywhere. And like, I mean, it happens, for instance, like in social science or science all the time, like Darwin, for him to come up with the theory of evolution and then gradual sort of development was inspired by this geologist, Charles Lyell, right? So he realized that just like geological changes that happens gradually over time, the species and animals change their forms and evolve that way. So the evolution idea came out of geology, like the principle of geology. And then here in US, we have people like, you know, Henry Ford looking at the butcher shop, going, you know, and seeing the conveyor belt, that everybody's doing their own only one job. And he used that, he metasampled that to create sort of mass production line, right? So these things happen throughout the field, in human history, everywhere. And I felt like, you know, that is the essence of hip hop. Unlike what other people think what hip hop is, which is just surface level sort of, well, maybe it's just misogyny, it's about materialism. I don't think that's why we are into this music. It's because it is truly innovative, and there's at heart there's metasampling. So.
I remember watching a video of yours actually, where you'd actually described metasampling and your deconstructions process as well. I mean, one of the examples of your performances was your kind of deconstructions of Cream, Wu-Tang's track, which was unreal, by the way. I mean, when you do things like that, your whole process, how long does that normally take you to, say, take a track that everyone knows, like Cream, for instance, and then reconstruct it into a different way like that?
I mean, it depends on the piece, but I think that, you know, more important thing is that, you know, the fact that the idea of sort of when the producers take these like little snippets from the records, and then they kind of manipulate them by slowing down or like chop it even further, like people like Jay Dilla, he actually chopped different sections of the record and makes a whole melody out of it. That's a very compositional device, right? So in motivic development, you have the fragmentation, you have elongation, you can invert things. So I was doing that to begin with. So I kind of meta-sampled that idea and looked at Wu-Tang track. What is, for me, was most interesting. Everybody knows that like da 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 da. So I'm gonna use that, and then I'm gonna use something else that's not from there, and I'm gonna make something new. So I'm actually writing music like hip hop producer. I mean, this Beethoven on Struggle, that track, we basically sampled 3 different tracks, 3 different pieces from Beethoven.
Wow.
So the main piece is Coriolan Overture, but we also sample Fuga, and then we literally quote the Ode to Joy at the very end. So.
And when you sample various tracks, say these 3 pieces from Beethoven, was it easier than you thought it might be? Did that kind of fall into place by accident, like some tracks do, or was it as difficult as you thought it would be? Because as we know, sampling is ridiculously hard, whether it's taking a track that's already made or remaking it in different ways. When you were making that track, was it easier than you thought, or as difficult as you thought it would be?
Well, I can't really tell how difficult it is for producers because I've never sampled. Like the thing is, I am thinking I'm doing let me just try to rephrase. I'm doing things like what I think they're doing, right? So I might be totally doing something else. Right? The thing is, that's how this thing works. Like, okay, well, you think something is this way, but you're totally misunderstanding something. It's kind of like when these Black musicians were using chords, right, jazz harmony, and some people who are only trained in classical harmony will be like, yeah, you're not supposed to voice that way, but like it doesn't matter if you end up creating something new, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that it was pretty quick because I knew these pieces well, and I did not use any scores because I wanted to kind of remember them. And so it's already kind of approximation. And then, like in Coriolan, there's no fugue, and I put little fugato in there. So I just put whatever I could remember, and then I write it down. So the way I write, I think that's the kind of core of the question, is that the way I write is more like traditional composer. I used to write on paper and pen, very old school, but after multiple big commissions, I realized that I couldn't do that and then put it on finale. So now I'm doing it directly on finale. But pretty much it's like boring.
I know what I like is to actually write music out. I mean, I did that as part of my college course years ago, and to actually just write an idea out, it literally takes hours. Where like Sibelius or Finale, you simply just play a couple of notes or it's already written out there for you, which is a lifesaver. But kind of going back to your performances and so forth, when you work with classically trained musicians, did you find any kind of difficulties in kind of opening up their horizons to hip hop music? Because for me, working with classical musicians as well, I know that a lot of the time, or previously anyway, that they weren't so open to the idea of doing anything else rather than classical music. Was that the same with you, for you both? Or did you find it quite easy to work with?
So from my experience, when we first started hiring people, for instance, if we were like getting subs, I felt as though I had to go on a constant diatribe of who we were, what it is. No, it's not shitty.
Of course.
And then once of all of the sheer number of reviews and write-ups and NPR quotes were coming in, it was easier and easier to have a good amount of clout attached to it. Because a lot of these NPR personalities, they themselves liked classical music. and they weren't necessarily hip hop heads, but they just liked music that did something to them. And so, so I feel as though since we were able to establish relationships with NPR types, it gave us a certain notoriety that kind of gave the group a validation almost. And then also, so once that was kind of in play, and we started really, once if we had to find other subs and stuff and more people that we worked with, I don't think it was so much of a problem that they thought that that the music wasn't good, because a lot of some of the players that we've worked with, I mean, you can't not hear any type of pop music in the world. To me, if someone says that, I really think that they're lying, because even if you go into the elevator and you go up, you're going to hear some like smooth jazz, or or if you're on the bus, somebody might be playing some like Britney Spears really loudly in their headphones. So it's, yeah, so I love Toxic, by the way. It's like so I think it's impossible to have a quote unquote classical musician be such a purist. Now, if they didn't like the music that JooWan was writing, that's a different story. But
that's right. That's a very different story.
Because honestly, we've received more pushback from hip hop crowd than we have from classical music crowd. Very, very, very few people that are like super into classical music have said anything negative. We've gotten more negativity from people that are hip hop, quote unquote, purists, that feels though it's not hip hop enough, or it's not whatever. Usually what it boils down to is that since JooWan looks the way he does, i.e. he's not black, it therefore is not real, So.
Well, but they all think that before meeting me, they all think that I'm black because my name is JooWan.
JooWan.
And when they see me, where's JooWan? Where's JooWan?
See, I'm quite surprised actually though that it was more the hip hop heads that didn't quite agree with what you're doing. That kind of surprised me, because although I'm kind of the same, not the same, but I know that when we first started 8 or 9 years ago, when you mentioned about Hip-Hop Orchestra, people laughed at the idea, but when you actually played it in front of them, they loved it. But I was surprised that you said that more hip-hop heads didn't quite agree with it. I mean, is that still the same now, after all these years, or are they more kind of accepting of the idea, especially after so many years, and like you said, the cloud as well?
Well, I think that it's actually, it's more than just a musical question, because I've been in this country a while now, but I'm not from here. So I couldn't quite get the dynamic. You probably don't either, because you're not from America. There's a history of institutional racism here. And then the pattern has been that Black people comes up with this great new thing, and then white people just take it. And so I totally understand where the apprehension comes from. But the difference between us and all these other sort of appropriation type situation is that if you do metasampling, first of all, within the system of metasampling, identity is not destiny. It's in fact, in metasampling, identity is destined to transform, because the whole idea is that you have 2 or more new things or seemingly disparate things, and then when they come together, it's not neatly sort of clean cut or a buffet where everything is just standing on their own. It has to compromise with each other. So what we are creating is neither hip hop nor classical. We are making up words all the time. We call it meta music because it goes beyond the genres. But essentially it's neither. And it's more like a concert music that we're making, because once you start putting fugues and like having some serious consideration of forms that is not just song form or 16-bar sort of hip hop format, you are immediately going out of that. I mean, we had a piece that is It was like 25 minutes long.
Wow.
And we started playing, we started playing it in the clubs. I couldn't understand why people were walking out. They couldn't really hit on girls with that. So, but
and
the meter changes all the time. So it's more like me being a composer, coming up with new concert music, and you know, I'm taking hip hop or trying to be like hip hop, like, you know, destroying the purity of hip hop or anything like that. Though I think the concept of purity in hip hop is interesting to me, because unless it is about, I don't know, racial or cultural purity, I mean, hip hop itself emerged out of sampling, right? So I don't know how it can be anything pure. I mean, American culture itself came out of sampling, right? So there's no really American, and even the fiddle music, isn't it like Celtic music in Ireland or something, right? So what's really pure to me is a question. And then also the kind of people who say pure that look white are kind of problematic generally. So I'm against purity, because there's no such thing as pure. I think the problem now, I'm gonna say briefly, the problem now that we have isn't necessarily that we are not acknowledging people's differences, but it's that while just knowing that we're very, very different, you know, based on your sexual identity and so on and so forth, and the struggles that comes with it, it's not that we don't know that. It's that we don't have any kind of ideological frame that these differences can come together and make something new. And, you know, traditionally, if you look at the history of America, it was when there's so much differences, it becomes war, or they actually innovate out of it. But what I see now is that so much sort of looking back into the past. So the right-wing types, they would say, oh, the 1950s was a great era. Like, great era for who, right? I mean, like, and also the tax rate was super high. I don't think that they would like it, you know, if you think about it. And then the left-wing types would say, oh, okay, you know, the world is sexist and, you know, racist in the different variant of it, right? So now we have trans and other issues. But that's still in the past. So the problem that we have isn't necessarily that, isn't something that we can actually solve the frame of the past. And I think that's why metasampling in different kind of iteration that is happening in other fields will actually create a prototype of solving these kind of things. Because like I said, I don't believe in top-down thing, but like many little things that many people do will create something bottom-up. So, yeah.
Are there any people that, or groups in particular, that really inspire you both to keep moving forward and keep changing people's minds about things?
I'll let you answer that.
Why? Why that's inspired?
That inspires me.
Wow, Chris. Wow.
Well,
He's a psychopath.
well, I mean, so I teach a music history course, and the more it's a music history course on like popular music, and the more
and hip hop,
and
teaches it to college.
yeah. So I'm I'm also gonna be teaching a hip hop music and appreciation culture at Diablo Valley College in March. But currently, I'm teaching a exploration of jazz studies, looking at blues and pop music and so on and so forth. And the more I find out about musicians' lives and just like their personal stuff, the less the less I gravitate to them, you know. So before I started teaching this class, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of admiration for a lot of musicians, most notably Jeff Buckley. I really liked his writing and his music. Also, like most people like that look like me, I was a big MJ fan. Also, since I did my master's in jazz, I really got into Chet Baker, but artists now, I have. There's no one that really inspires me too
Not
much.
even Tekashi 69? Are you
No. don't care for his music. Don't care for all his tattoos if they're even real. I don't know. So that's me.
He's the bomb.com.
And how about you, JooWan?
Well, I am, I look young, but I'm not that young. So I have been, and I probably be continuously inspired by Beethoven, because, I mean, it was when I was 10 years old, I listened to Symphony Number 5, and by the time he was pretty much losing his hearing, and I couldn't believe that a person who is getting deaf wrote that music, and the cohesiveness and sort of obsession and all this stuff. So that kind of subconsciously probably changed me. And in terms of hip hop, I really love Jay Dilla. I think that he's like Mozart or Beethoven of hip hop production, because, I mean, some people might disagree, but definitely he's like Thelonious Monk of hip hop production, because the kind of things that he did with just MPC alone, or without using, quantizing, he used it as if they are instruments, and then I realized that, okay, if he does it, then I could do a real music. I mean, not that it's not real music. I could do an acoustic music that is performed by real people, so that it's more sort of live, right? So even though Roots did it, but I don't think that Roots is different kind of animal, right? So it's more like a big band or bigger band. So I really wanted to use the orchestral sort of ideas, because let's face it, it's sort of other than Europe, it's having a hard time, and I foresee, without serious sort of updating of aesthetic, not like updating personnel, like, if you think about, I give this analogy, like if you think about Goldman and Sachs, right? They're going to change themselves because it's going to be equity, and inclusion, and you have like two basically like African American or like people of color in the board members, but they do the same business of like trading futures and like wrecking the economy and so on and so forth. Should I say that? Maybe.
Say whatever you want.
You should really think about what the world needs in terms of concert music, because let's face it, pop music has no problem. Pop music will be continuously going, however, terrible you think it is. There is the machine that's actually out there that normal people get, right? And I think that classical music doesn't have it. Classical music is simply because it's just very narrow, and it will be like Chinese Kung Fu. How many people go to Shaolin Temple to practice, I don't know, Bagua Zhang, whatever? I mean, it's like, and then when they start fighting against MMA guys, they get pummeled, right? So it's the kind of reality that we live in. So that's how I see it.
Nice.
Can I answer your question? I think I went
This is what, people always apologize to me for talking too much, but I love it when people just talk. I love listening to people. But going back to what you said about Jay Dilla, it's funny how at the time of when he was around, that people didn't quite get him at first because of his kind of offbeat drum patterns that was creating. And it wasn't until he unfortunately passed away at such a young age where people were thinking, you know what, he actually is amazing. And then his sound just stayed with us for so many years.
Yeah. Well, he has actually worked. It's a very unfortunate and terrible tragedy that happened, because he just passed too early. He had lupus, I think, and then he passed away because of the complication. I actually wanted to meet him, and we had a contact at Stone's Throw, and there's a guy named Egon. Do you know Egon? And he used to be at Stone's Throw, now he's out.
Okay.
So it was after Dilla passed and I kind of really discovered him. And he actually sent me a bunch of albums that they did with Madlib and Dilla, you know, that album, Champion Sound. So I think that he was actually influencing really important producers / artists, like namely Neptune. Without Jay Dilla, there's no Neptune. There's no Kanye West. And I think that's how I see Jay Dilla. So he's sort of like the producer's producer. He always has been, right? So, I mean, if you think about, I don't know whether you've seen this interview from Questlove talking about Jay Dilla and how amazing he was. We just like send the track without mastering. It sounds like really dope right away. So, and then apparently he wrote music. I mean, created music very fast. So.
Yeah, you mentioned Kanye West actually there. What do you both think about his, was it Late Registration when he orchestrated that? What do you think about that performance?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Of course. You mentioned Kanye West as being inspired by Jay Dilla, and obviously Kanye did the whole live rendition of Late Registration. What did you both think of that?
I didn't check it out, so.
I haven't seen it.
I think I did. I think I did portions of it. Didn't who's the husband of Chrissy Teigen, the guy?
Not John Legend. John Legend, is it?
Yeah, he did the orchestration, right? Am I wrong?
I can't remember exactly who did it, but I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was like some of it was really good. Yeah, so.
You don't sound too happy about it.
anything that is happening, sort of coming up with new things and bridging something is a very positive thing. So I don't want to sound like patronizing or anything. I think that, you know, like what we're doing is different from that because we're trying to come up with like concert music, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't do these kind of endeavors because metasampling happens in any level and it should be happening all the time. So yes, you know, and me personally, I thought it was okay. I mean, I was thinking maybe I could do better, like because I'm a composer, I'm a hater to begin with, right? All the composers hate each other. So I was thinking that because it's a professional habit, and maybe some of my personality leans itself that way, but yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good. And Nas did something like that.
Yeah, I'd like to ask about that. Yeah,
something like that. You know, we are all aware of these things that's going on. And there's this guy in Poland, Jimek. He did this history of hip-hop. That's good. You know, it's fun projects. Yeah.
Saying that, actually, I'm glad you kind of mentioned that you think you could do better. Actually, are there any kind of tracks or albums that you two would like to work on and kind of redo?
Yes and no, because there are legal issues with the tracks that are very, very famous. So we decided to focus on people who are dead and without representation so that we can export them off.
I forget the legal issues there. Any kind of few projects.
Yes, yeah, legal issues.
Yeah.
You all know about those, yeah.
Yeah, there isn't any album or anything that comes to mind off the top of my head. Yeah, I can't think of anything that would scream at me, be like, oh, we should totally do something like that. Because right now we're just focused on doing original music. Because I think we have a good enough back catalog of kind of covers. And I think kind of moving forward, we're just going to be focusing on original material and or sampling, like JooWan said, taking material from people that have been gone for like, 100 years, so it's literally kind of part of the musical psyche, but and even then it's going to be very blatantly obvious, like, so.
Nice. And when's the new album coming out? You said the single's coming out in March.
Yeah, so we just had the first single coming out. First single came out, Beethoven on Struggle. That was on the 26th. The next single is February 23rd.
23rd.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a premiere before on 18th, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's my birthday, so amazing.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the full album, Death Become Life, that's going to be coming out March 19th.
Oh, amazing. How many tracks did you do? You say it took about 6 months to make it. How many tracks did you make in the end? About an hour's worth as well.
Was it 10?
10 tracks.
It was 10 tracks. Yeah.
Amazing. And is this your first album that you've done, or have you done previous ones before?
No, so this is our third album.
Oh, third.
Yeah, this is our third one. So all of our materials on Bandcamp or Spotify and stuff. People can Google us and find us. Yeah, but this is our as I mentioned earlier in the interview. So this album is different from the other ones, mainly because it was recorded pretty much live in the recording studio, and so all of the tracks that you hear, they were pretty much done in like 1 to 2 takes.
Wow.
With very little polishing, mainly because we didn't have the time and the funds to fix anything. So if you hear a few mistakes, just ignore it.
No mistakes.
No mistakes. And our MC Sandman, he nailed everything pretty much in one take. Because we have been performing majority of all of the music for the past 2 years or so.
Except
live.
3 new pieces.
Yeah, except for 3 pieces. So we've been pretty much practicing them for 2 years. So going to the recording studio, it was I want to say it was a walk in the park, but it was a very fast, brisk in the park. So yeah.
Well, congratulations on all the work, though. I can't wait to listen to it. And as this is your third album, has the process got kind of slightly easier along the way, or is it still just as difficult as the first time? Yeah, not a stupid question. I was going to ask you one stupid question, but...
So like I said, this is our third album, and every time we're going to either record a single or an album, we're always thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be easy, and then we start doing the budget, looking at the music, looking at who we have that's available, or suddenly decides to leave the country or whatever, or get sick or what have you, then all the problems start to arise, and each one becomes its own animal in recording. So, I mean, the process has only gotten easier in the sense that I think we're now able to really know what works and what doesn't in terms of, okay, what's a good amount of length for a song, and how many songs can we knock out in a day? But everything else has pretty much stayed the same. I think kind of going forward, we're gravitating more toward these kind of live performance albums, because that's more so where we lie anyway. Because as we're doing this more and more, we're adding more and more musicians, and by the time you start adding a full orchestra and then trying to do some type of bells and whistles electronically, it kind of defeats the purpose of then having that orchestra. So so I think we're kind of going forward, we're going to really kind of just keep beefing up the ensemble, beefing up that live sound, because there aren't that many people that are kind of doing that in our field without kind of trying to add some bells and whistles to it. So
do you have a kind of ideal size that you're looking for in terms of the orchestra, or? I'll
let him answer that one.
Okay. Do you want?
Yeah, so the music has been written initially for 10 piece, and then we actually had a commission which was for full symphony orchestra. So I ended up writing, not writing, but beefing up the orchestration for 60 plus.
Wow.
And then And then for this album, we were initially wanting to film 25-piece orchestra in the museum's Samsung Hall, which is a beautiful space. And in one of actually the videos, Everything Returns to One, you're going to be able to see that hall. Very spacious, wonderful space. And then for that project, so I had to rewrite twice, right? So we have now everything is sort of we have different sizes. We have music for different sizes right now. But ideally, if we were to tour with our ensemble, I would like it to be 25-piece or 22-piece orchestra.
Nice.
So then that way we have full and up string section that creates lush sound, about 13 strings. And then we have woodwind quintet, including French horn. And then we have soprano, piano, drum. How many is that? 22? I'm not sure. And then we're going to have perf dancer. So.
Wow. And when it comes to the process of actually choosing the tracks between you, do you tend to choose them before the recording session, or do you sometimes change your mind when the recording session actually happens, thinking, okay, that track actually sounds better than I thought it would live. Let's change our mind again and cut that one or keep this one. What's the process that you two choose or go through when choosing tracks for the album or the single as well?
Yeah, a lot of it is done in prep. So when we start recording, we don't have time to change anything. It's just like, okay, we decided, let's go, and then have the performance right. So that's because otherwise, I mean, that also requires me to rewrite, which I could do it quick, but it will be very difficult to do that. Simply that we don't have much budget to have booked up like 5-6 days. Even for this one, we had to book 5 days, almost a week of recording time, simply because there were a lot of people involved, even though we created like orchestral effects by overdubbing the same parts, but still initial recording. And then we have to like do some mixing, and we had to be there.
And then we had to also break up the ensemble for COVID.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, we always pick the music ahead of time, and kind of going with that idea. It's music that we have performed at least like 6 months prior, because when we come to the recording session, sometimes the players that we've used, they might not be available. So it's better to kind of use music that we know in and out, so we can just kind of plug somebody in if need be right away, and we know what those challenges are going to be.
Nice. When it comes to the kind of admin side of things, for instance, contracts or percentages, whatever it might be, and then when also the mixing side of things as well, is that down to you two predominantly, or do you try and bring in other people who might be, say, a bit more experienced in dealing with certain situations just to cover you two, just in case anything happens?
You can answer that.
Yes. So in regards to contracts, so first off, so we're with Opus 3 artists. They handle all of our booking, mainly our larger booking outside the Bay Area and international. And so any contracts that we get, JooWan and I always review them. The booking agency first reviews it, tells us the kind of nitty gritty, and then we take a look at everything. And same thing with any contract that we get, whether it's through just JooWan and I or with the booking agency. So we always look through everything. Now, not every contract is going to be 100% in the favor of the artist. You know, very rarely you're going to get a contract where it's like the artist gets everything. You know, and if some organization says that, I'm going to be a little suspect, because, you know, it doesn't make any sense. If you have a venue, the venue has to keep a percentage just to keep the lights on. So, you know, but we have good representation, and we have great people that we work with. And if there is an issue, we always figure it out.
A lawyer, we have a lawyer.
Yeah, and we have a lawyer, and since we have been doing this for a number of years, we kind of know what the playing field is.
Yeah.
So
Good.
Yeah, one thing that I can add to it is that, so for instance, that Broadway contract, we had to have a lawyer. So if it is a big contract that we are not sure of, you need to have a lawyer, man, because otherwise, yeah, you can't really negotiate.
Can't risk it, because that's something that I've always been worried about, is when you're working on such a big project and with so many different people as well, all it takes is one mistake or one thing that you might not have seen to literally ruin everything. So I've always wondered how you two might have dealt with such a situation. So got lawyers, people that you work with as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, nowadays musicians, being a musician is very much like being an entrepreneur. And in the beginning of establishing your company, you will realize that even though you prepare everything in the right way, you will have a bunch of people that are creating problems, and you would have to deal with them. And we had to go through that. And then the best way to deal with them is to fire them. That's what it's terrible.
yeah,
I've been there myself, so don't worry.
I mean, we try to have an environment where everybody is safe and comfortable, and gets paid well. Everyone gets paid before we do, So, but if said musicians or whoever we're working with still feel that there's a problem, then you can't do anything about that. That person will always be a liability, because you're not just thinking about yourself. You're thinking about 10 plus people, plus a booking agency, plus a marketing people, plus an audience. So so it just takes one person to mess up anything. So so we just let people go.
Yeah,
you have to.
Yeah. And we try to work through it with them before we let them go. But if there is just no other option, there's not much we can do.
Yeah.
Have you both kind of like learned to see the signs a bit earlier when you work on the project of kind of reading people, thinking, okay, this person will be good, this person might cause a little problem? Have you both learned to kind of see the signs a bit earlier so you know what you're dealing with?
Well, I always kind of think that everybody's on probation. I mean, sometimes, signs, show themselves, and we kind of just note it in our minds. But, as things go on, if certain things just start manifesting, then, we try to confront the person just, privately, like what's going on or whatnot. And like I said, if nothing works after like 3 or 4 or 5 tries, then there's an underlying thing that's just not going to work.
Yeah. I want to just add clarification on that. So we have people that we've worked with over 8 years, our MC and drummer, and our soprano. She's been with us for a long time, and first violin too. I think that what happens to people's careers kind of change their perspective on what they want, right? So, and that's for us too, because if we're going up and up, we need to actually have people that can follow, keep up with us, right? So I don't find it to be anything really personally I don't find it personal at all, because if somebody doesn't want to do it, we want to, because we actually do our best first to actually communicate what we can do, and then even after that they don't want to do it, then it's like on them, because we don't want to push them. So it's very important to us that people have fun, because music should be fun. Yeah, even if it is foreign classically written music, it should be fun. Otherwise, you shouldn't do it, because what's the point? So.
Definitely. And do you both have any kind of favourite projects that we've worked on? Because I saw you did the ESPN thing, which is amazing. Do you both have any kind of personal favourite moments? You must have so many, but are there any kind of moments that really stick out to both of you?
Yeah. a number of years ago, we were part of the Zoo Labs music residency here in Oakland, California. And one of the tracks that were recorded was called Last Donut. And so when the MCs were doing that track, Sandman, our current MC, our resident MC, he had asked me to sing the chorus with him. So I did the chorus. I listened back. I'm like, this sounds pretty good. so I did some more parts on it, and then we just went with using that and mixed him to kind of beef up my voice. And then we went back in the following day just to like clean up a bunch of stuff. So I really loved doing that. I mean, I personally love recording more so than performing, because I think in recording you can just do a lot more. You just have more freedom, more space. So.
Yeah. Well, for me, it would be this album, because given the situation that's going on in the world, and the three pieces that I recently wrote, which was commissioned by Europe Gardens Festival, and then partially also supported by Asian Art Museum. If they were meant to ease my sort of hard feelings about the world, and then these three pieces, and then the other pieces that we included, three of them I finished after my mother passed in 2014, and then that year, 2 weeks after, our longtime family friend, basically my grandfather figure, he passed. A lot of death happened, so I had to kind of deal with that, and I wrote three pieces of that, and title track, Death Become Life, that's about death, and all this stuff is about you dealing with impossible situations that you have no control over, and then plus we ended up having beefed up ensemble, even though it was virtual, and we had to do the overdubs, but those things like really kind of spoke to me, and I hope it does that to other people too. Because if you look at Beethoven at the end, go to this quiet part when I quote Ode to Joy, there's this thing called apatheia, which is a Stoic term where your mind is free from violent emotion and passion, so that you can be lucid and have an equanimity. And there's an Epicurean version called ataraxia, which I use. So each three pieces, and often in this album throughout, there will be these moments of sort of relaxation and healing. So.
Wow, it's amazing. And I could talk to you both for so much longer, but I think I might stop it right there. But before we go, I want to say how thankful I am for both of you for taking the time to speak with me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A pleasure. And how can people find you both online and the group?
Sure. You can type in M as in Mary, I-K as in kite, N as in AWOOJ.com, MikNawooj.com.
Nice.
All socials the same, Mik Nawooj, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and that's my name spelled backward, by the way.
I was going to ask about that actually, where that name came from. So there we go. What an amazing name. I love it. But guys, thank you so much again for everything. I really appreciate it. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. And take care, everyone. Bye-bye.